All right, let's get right into it. We're looking at some seriously escalating tensions between Turkey and Iran. Things have gotten very hot, very fast, and a few mysterious incidents are making us all ask one huge question. Is Turkey actually being dragged into a war?
Okay, so this whole thing really boils down to this. 3 missiles over just 10 days. What could have been dismissed as, isolated incidents, well, it's now starting to feel a lot more like a countdown. And it's putting a key NATO ally right on the edge of a much, much bigger conflict.
So the whole mystery starts right here with these 3 projectiles. And they all lead to one big question. For a country like Turkey, which has really insisted it's not a party to this war, well, these incidents are making that claim of neutrality a whole lot harder to maintain. Just look at this timeline. March 4th, you have the first one. Okay, March 9th, another one is intercepted. And then, boom, March 13th, a third is intercepted. But this one was different. This one was way too close for comfort, and it was almost impossible for Ankara to just brush it off. The question isn't just about whether Turkey wants to stay out anymore. It's whether the war is now putting Turkey on its map.
Now, what's so critical here is the location. We're talking an explosion heard from the ground, windows shaking, and it all went down near Ankara Air Base. Now, there's no public proof that the base itself was the target, but come on, the proximity alone just shoves this crisis into a completely different and way more dangerous league.
And here is exactly why that location matters so much. See, Incirlik isn't just a Turkish base, it's a major hub for NATO allies. You've got forces from the US, Spain, and Poland stationed there. So a threat to this base isn't just a threat to Turkey. No, it's an international incident. It puts the entire NATO alliance on notice.
Okay, so let's zoom out a little bit because these missile scares, they are not happening in a vacuum. When you look at the bigger picture across the entire region, you start to see a really disturbing pattern take shape.
And suddenly, this isn't just about Turkey anymore. You've got French and Italian forces getting hit in Iraq. Commercial ships are under attack. These aren't just random, unfortunate accidents. No way. When you put it all together, it really starts to look like a coordinated pressure campaign against anyone linked to NATO and Western interests in the region.
So here's the bottom line. Those incidents in Turkey, they're not outliers anymore. They fit perfectly into this broader and, frankly, much scarier regional pattern. They're just the latest data points in a conflict that seems to be expanding its reach by the day.
This whole crisis has also managed to expose a really fascinating, and I'd say pretty awkward paradox right at the very heart of Turkey's defense strategy. And it's forcing some very uncomfortable conversations in Ankara.
And this right here is the multi-billion-dollar question. I mean, Turkey made this huge political and financial gamble on the Russian S-400 system, right? A move that got them kicked out of the F-35 fighter jet program. So when a real missile threat shows up at their doorstep, why wasn't it used?
And the comparison is pretty stark. On one side, you've got the Sovereign Shield, that expensive S-400 system that caused so many problems with allies. And on the other side, you've got the real shield, the integrated NATO network that, actually got the job done when danger came knocking.
And get this, here's the official explanation straight from the Turkish Defense Ministry. And okay, it might be a perfectly valid technical point, but it also exposes this massive gap between Turkey's whole rhetoric of strategic independence and the on-the-ground reality of its dependence on NATO.
So how is Ankara trying to navigate this incredible tightrope? Well, its response so far has been this really delicate balancing act between talking tough and acting with a whole lot of caution. And it seems like that caution is being driven by some powerful forces back home.
What we're seeing is a classic good cop, bad cop routine. You've got President Erdogan calling for calm and de-escalation, while his ministries are taking a much tougher line, basically warning that Turkey's patience isn't infinite. It's a smart play, really. It gives Ankara room to warn and deter without having to fully commit to anything.
But there's another really powerful reason for all this caution, and you can see it right here. The national economy is still under some serious strain. You've got high inflation, a manufacturing slowdown. A full-blown war is literally the last thing the Turkish economy needs right now. Now, this tough economic situation brings up a pretty uncomfortable question. Could a long, drawn-out regional crisis, one that stops short of all-out war, actually help the government politically at home? Distract from the economy, rally everyone around the flag? It's something to think about.
And just to add another layer of intrigue to all this, a major politically charged legal case in the U.S. involving Turkey's Halk Bank was suddenly put on hold on March 9th. That's right in the middle of all these missile incidents.
And the reason given? National security. The timing is, to say the very least, pretty hard to just ignore.
So let's circle back to our big question and try to land on some kind of verdict. Is Turkey being dragged into a war? Well, like pretty much everything in this part of the world, the answer is not a simple yes or no.
See, legally, on paper, the answer is no. Turkey has not declared war on anyone. But practically, in the real world, the answer is leaning much closer to yes. When you're using allied defenses on your own soil 3 times in 10 days, that clear line between being outside a war and being impacted by it starts to get really, really blurry.
And this is the crucial point. If Turkey does get more involved, it might not look like a formal declaration of war. Ankara has a whole playbook for this stuff. They can project power indirectly, using everything from intelligence sharing to proxy forces, things we've already seen them do in places like Syria and Libya.
And that really leaves us with one final thought. If Turkey does decide to shift into a broader anti-Iran alignment, that move might not be some clear, dramatic act of war. It could be something far more ambiguous, far more deniable, and maybe even more destabilizing for the entire region. The question isn't just if Turkey will get involved anymore, it's how.